Today on Weekend Review, International Overdose Awareness Day makes its way to Terrace. The Walk for Children and Ministry has now been on its way to Vancouver, and new housing will be provided this fall to those who are in the midst of relationship violence. Hello and thank you for joining us here on Weekend Review, where we cover all the news surrounding the Northwest. Well, the BC provincial election is now only 2 weeks away, and without BC United, the election sees just the NDP and Conservative Party ready to begin their campaigns as soon as their writs drop on September of the 21st. Claire Rattay will be representing the Conservatives and Sarah Zimmerman will be representing the NDP. Rattay was nominated back in January of this year, while Zimmerman was elected as recently as late June. And as of right now, the Conservatives are expected to win the subject to change. While the provincial election is scheduled for the 19th of October, citizens in the Northwest will be able to place their vote at an electoral office on September 21st, just after 4 p.m. Now, our first local story of the day is about International Overdose Awareness Day that just set foot in Terrace this past weekend. Taking place on August 31st, this will always be a heavy day for many, and warning, there are some disturbing topics at hand.
This past Saturday, it was a powerful day at George Little Park in Terrace, and it saw many come for International Overdose Awareness Day. Perspectives were contentious, with eye-opening takes on how the day should be treated going forward since it was officially created in 2001, and how locally Terrace and British Columbia should handle drug treatment.
We owe it to each other to sit down and share our thoughts and our feelings with each other and try to come to a shared understanding of where we go together. Because if we're pulling in different directions, we're not going to do justice to those families that have lost their loved ones.
Our loved ones who are living on the streets in Terrace right now, they're not dying of overdose anymore, because they're taking care of one another. They love one another enough to stand up for one another. What they're dying of is stigma. They're dying of infections. They're dying of preventable, communicable diseases that could be easily prevented by them feeling welcome to walk into our hospital, but they don't. I'm sorry, but that's just how I feel about today. It's a Band-Aid solution. Just like every other solution our governance has given us, our leadership has given us. Nothing but Band-Aids over bullet holes.
It's an emotional day for anyone, with many organizations and community members present, especially for Lana Green, who lost her son TJ 3 years ago. Lana is part of Moms Stop the Harm, which is a network for families related to substance harm or death. The organization has now created a network of over 2,500 families across Canada.
I thank God I found them, because it helped me to understand what my son was going through and to be able to love him where he was at. And now after losing him, they also offer support groups. It's a network where we can stand together and keep learning and unlearning and advocate for those drug policy changes that will keep people alive.
With hundreds of overdose deaths in BC, including 192 this past July, Lana and many others believe there should be a more specific way to handle drug treatment.
When we're talking about detox and treatment and these things, that we need to be looking at an evidence-based, compassion approach, and the government needs to listen to families who are living this. There should be nothing about us without us. Peers, people with lived experience need to be in on those decision-making tables. I'm hopeful that Moms Stop the Harm, that we can build a chapter of us active advocates here at Terrace and get some momentum to push for the resources that people need so we can see more of them alive so they can recover.
And from Terrace, I'm Damian Smith.
It's been revealed that the city of Terrace is supporting the Kitsim-Kalem First Nation as they aim to get control of the 3 logging tenures tied to the now closed Skeena sawmills. While the First Nation did already buy the sawmills licenses as part of a deal that would see the Kitsim-Kalem take the properties out of bankruptcy, actual control of all the Skeena Sawmill's assets would have to be granted by the BC provincial government, who let the nation negotiate the deal in the first place, and that process could reportedly end up taking about 6 months. Kitsum Kalem has apparently said that they want to get logging as soon as humanly possible so they get funds required for them to put an actual business plan in place. Now announced on Thursday by Canfor, they announced that the public that they will be shutting 2 more of their sawmills in the northern BC area. Those sawmills are located in the communities of Fort St. John and Vanderhoof, and the reason for these shutdowns are due to numerous financial losses as well as current weak lumber markets. These shutdowns are set to affect about 500 of Canfor's employees and will also see about 670 million board feet of annual production capacity taken away from Canfor's production in BC. But as a way to respond to their timber supply seeing a big-time reduction, the company is reportedly set to look at whether or not to use their other resources in order to help out the other local forestry companies. Up next, we'll take a look at Ella's Place, which is a new housing unit available come this fall. Welcome back. Well, there will be new housing available this October in Terrace for women who are escaping relationship violence in the Northwest. Announced last Friday, it was another opening of the province's housing initiative that was once put out in 2017.
And as the days get shorter come this fall, there will be a new housing opportunity for those who need it. At Ella's Place, there will be 22 units available for women who need accommodation when fleeing relationship violence. With the opening of the building to the public this past Friday, this settlement hits close to home for at least a few of the speakers.
When I grew up, my mom and I had to flee violence. And in the city, I grew up in Toronto, a great big city. And I found out only years later that the place that we got to was the only shelter that was available in a city that size. And thank God it was there.
We're going to tour this amazing building and see how it's changing the lives for people who are fleeing violence, how this is such a progressive, safe space where you, your family, your pets can all come when you need it, and how it provides wraparound supports for everything that you need to rebuild your life and restart.
Now, Ella's Place is just a small example of new housing built around the province, where the BC government has provided $19 billion towards housing investment since 2017. But as Amanda Owens puts it, there is a need for these types of homes when unhealthy personal problems arise.
When women and children come here after either their stay at the transition house or whatever means that brings them here, living in a complex like this brings together a community. So peer supports, you find friendships and relationships and support one another, but also our staff here can provide advocacy and connection to other supports and agencies within the community as well, which is helps provide more stability.
Social service agencies like Kassan work with a lot of other agencies in town. There's a lot of collaboration that goes on, and this kind of just extends that a little bit further. Just all of the organizations and agencies supporting community members together.
And it was a collaboration of many parties that made this emptied lot into the 3-story building it is today.
Without, coming together like this with the city support, BC Housing support, having such a great architect and development consultant and the staff team is absolutely amazing that help bring this all together. So yeah, lots of thanks for everyone involved.
From Terrace, I'm Damian Smith.
Well, the city of Terrace recently put out a statement saying that water restrictions on sprinkler use have been partially lifted and they're allowed to be used again, but only in a couple of allotted times for right now. Now, the times in question that residents are allowed to use their sprinklers, if they have them, are between 6 a.m. and 9 a.m., as well as between 7 p.m. and 10 p.m., and they can only be used on whatever days the city says are available for that use. And as of how that designated day system works, odd number addresses can use sprinklers on Wednesdays and Sundays, and the even number addresses get to use Tuesdays and Saturdays. Terrace is said to be sending out updates for whenever they end up making adjustments to these restrictions. Now, the pair walking for awareness for children in ministry care have reached their initial goal of Prince George and are now plowing on to Vancouver. CFTK's Jaylene Matthews now with more of the details about this story on the Josephs.
Kim and Jordan's marathon walk from Prince Rupert to Prince George has been completed, but they've decided that was only a leg in the journey. Despite pain, car troubles, and extreme weather conditions, Kim and Jordan Joseph arrived in Prince George as planned August 21st and have now made it all the way down to Quesnel. Kim and Jordan are walking for awareness around alleged gaps in care and unfair removal practices by the Ministry of Child and Family Development. Kim and Jordan's journey has gathered momentum along the way, with the pair being drummed, welcomed, and walked alongside in many of the communities they've passed. The Walking for Children in Care Facebook group has grown to over 1,500 members, and there is now a petition in their honor that can be signed on change.org. For CFTK-TV News, I'm Jaylene Matthews.
Federal NDP leader Jagmeet Singh said he's ripped up the supply and confidence deal his party had with the minority Liberal government that helped keep them in power. Singh also said he notified Prime Minister Justin Trudeau that the NDP are pulling out of the deal because of the government's inability to tackle corporate greed and its inability to stop the surging opposition Conservatives. He said Liberals are too weak, too selfish, and too beholden to corporate interests to fight for people, and that his party will deliver relief, fix healthcare, build homes, and stop price gouging. Welcome back. Two talking sticks that were displayed for many years on the wall of the Terrace City Council chambers will finally be sent home soon after a timely process of discovering their true origins. And with that, Jaylene Matthews has more.
Back in 2016, then Councillor Michael Prevost put a motion on the floor to attempt to repatriate two talking sticks, whose exact origins at the time were unknown.
We looked into that and found out that they come from this area called Kingcome, but we never really connected properly with the folks there. We were struggling back and forth, and it just kind of fell off the table.
Eventually, a newspaper article about the sticks came to the attention of Marianne Nicholson, an artist and cultural researcher. She believed the sticks were perhaps from her home at Kingcome Inlet of the Kwakwaka'wakw peoples.
And then I had coffee with my friend Luann Neal, and she was telling me she was heading out to Terrace, and I asked her, I said, can you look into this for me? And so when she went up, that's when everything really started to roll.
Marianne sent a photo of the sticks to her nephew Ryan, who's also a cultural researcher. Ryan was able to locate a photo from their archives and identify the sticks as the same ones as pictured.
He scans through the photos to look for our old things, and then he's like, there it is. And it's quite remarkable because it's not very easy to see in the photo, but once you can see it, you recognize, oh, that is it right there.
This will be the first piece coming back to Kingcome as a result of recent repatriation efforts from Marianne and her community.
Like I would say thousands of cultural items, information and material left this community over the last 100 years.
The city of Terrace must now decide exactly how the sticks are getting back.
How they're going to get to Kingcome is yet to be determined, but we're not, they need to be brought there by somebody. So if somebody from Kingcome comes and get them, or if we take them to Kingcome, that has yet to be decided. But hopefully we'll be doing that sooner than later and get these talking sticks home soon.
Nicholson says when the works return home, they can go back to being used for their real intended purposes.
You know, our material wasn't actually meant to be seen in galleries. It's actually meant to be part of ceremony, and so with the revival of our ceremonies and the revival of our cultural ways, then, you know, we really need our materials to return home so that we can study them and revive those traditions.
For CFTK News in Terrace, I'm Jaylene Matthews.
Now, reported last week on August 27th at around 6:30 p.m., the Terrace RCMP and BC Highway Patrol were dispatched to a single vehicle collision on Highway 16 approximately 25 kilometers west of Terrace. Upon arrival, police located a sedan upside down in a ditch next to the highway, and despite life-saving efforts by the emergency responders, the 35-year-old male passenger from Prince Rupert unfortunately passed away. Now, police do not believe that alcohol or drugs were contributing factors, and BC Highway Patrol are looking for any witnesses or anyone with any dash cam of the incident or of the events leading up to the incident to call BC Highway Patrol at Smithers at 250-847-3233. Now, 35 years after an entire family went missing in BC, the RCMP have put out yet another appeal. Here's CFTK's Jaylene Matthews with more.
In August of 1989, 26-year-old Ronnie Jack, his wife Doreen, of the same age, and their two sons, Russell, 9, and Ryan, 4, had recently relocated to Prince George. Ronald and Doreen were looking for work. According to a 2019 police report, investigators believe Ronnie spoke to a man at the First Leader pub on the evening of Tuesday, August 1st. They believe Ronnie and Doreen were offered jobs at a logging camp or ranch thought to be about halfway to Vanderhoof on Highway 16. As Ronnie and Doreen did not own a vehicle, the unknown man offered to drive the Jack family to the camp or ranch. The man accompanied Ronnie back to his residence about 4 blocks from the pub and waited while the family packed. Ronnie called his brother at 11:16 p.m., then 2 hours later his parents at 1:21 a.m. At approximately 1:30 in the morning, the Jack family drove off with the man in a dark-colored 4-wheel drive pickup truck. The unknown male was described as Caucasian, 35 to 40 years old, over 6 feet tall, and between 200 and 275 pounds, with reddish-brown hair and a full beard. It is believed that shortly after the phone call with Ronnie's parents, the family departed their home. Although they were expected to return in 10 days, they have never been seen since.
Then he said, we'll be back in 8 days, Mom, don't worry about us. But if I don't come back, look for me.
Both the RCMP and the Jack family's relatives have never stopped searching for them. There's also a Facebook group dedicated to the search. And recently in Prince George, a vigil was hosted to mark 35 years since their disappearance. The RCMP have searched several possible properties for the Jack family over the years to no avail. Since they were reported missing on August 25th, 1989, the Prince George RCMP say they have conducted hundreds of interviews and obtained or created thousands of documents as part of the investigation. Now, 35 years since the family's disappearance, RCMP are once again appealing to the public for information. If you have any information, please contact the Prince George RCMP at 250-561-3300 or anonymously contact Crime Stoppers at 1-800-222-8477. For CFTK News, I'm Jaylene Matthews.
Now, currently in the Northwest, severe fires have gone down in the latest couple of weeks, and there are currently 13 fires of note. However, with only 2 of note in the Northwest. There is the Extol River fire as well as the Little Oliver Creek wildfire, which were both discovered back in July. However, both are classified as under control. The most severe at the moment is the Coria Creek wildfire, which is still active and called out of control near Morristown. Still to come, Air Canada and the Airline Pilots Association still remain far apart. One man is in custody following a 3-day police search, and RCMP say they located and arrested one man in connection with assault on Tuesday, September 3rd. Now, on August 31st at approximately 7:45 a.m., the Terrace RCMP received a report of a possible aggravated assault where one woman was seriously injured. The North District Emergency Response Team was then deployed to help locate him, and the man was arrested without incident and remains in police custody pending a court appearance. And no further details are available at the moment, and more information may be released as it becomes more available. Now, it may get tough for air travelers soon, with Air Canada's pilot strike set to start in a few weeks unless an agreement is made between the airline and the Airline Pilots Association. Now, Air Canada and the Airline Pilots Association are to meet again after the talks had completely stalled, and we are still just under 2 weeks until a strike becomes imminent. However, the sides still remain apart during negotiations.
We've sat here tied to a sub-inflationary contract for a decade.
That is Jesse Yancey, who is a pilot himself, but is also speaking for the 98% of pilots who voted in favor of job action, demanding better pay, retirement, and quality of life conditions working for Air Canada. After a 10-year contract that started in the summer of 2014, Yancey echoes that these pilots need to be rested and attentive to do their jobs.
The biggest one I think we see right now with our pilot group, our work rules haven't changed in a decade to keep up with the way the airline operates now. Our pilots, when they're at work, we want to be working. We want to be flying people around, not sitting in layover cities in a hotel, not being productive. That's just another day on the road.
And in terms of working hours, the Airline Pilots Association feels as though that their scheduling could use more consistency, especially considering months of training that must be given to pilots to land in those different cities.
One trip I could, on my fleet, I could operate to London, Heathrow, or Dubai, and another trip I could operate from Toronto to Vancouver. A lot of people seem to think we just fly a specific route, but there's a lot of variation in our day-to-day schedule. There's a lot of variation in our work hours.
Yancey notes that bargaining can typically be contentious, but a 10-year deal is far too long, and he expanded on why the next deal should not reach a decade long.
A 10-year collective agreement is almost unheard of. I honestly can't think of another labor group that has had something like that. Our legacy peers in the States, Delta, United, American, have all undergone 2 to 3 rounds of bargaining. WestJet, for example, is now on their second collective agreement. There's a lot of ground that we have to cover to try and modernize our collective agreement so that it reflects today's operating environment, today's economic environment, and the global environment of pilot demand.
However, Air Canada pilots are reassuring customers that their goal is not to strike, with September 18th as the walk-off date in which they will have to put forth an announcement of 72 hours before if they are to strike.
I think the big point for our passengers to keep in mind here is our goal is not to strike. Our goal is to achieve a collective agreement that appropriately reflects the value we bring to our airline. Our members have shown up for the last year, ready, willing, and able to reach a new collective agreement. And in the next 3 weeks, the onus really is on Air Canada to finally come to the table and truly, meaningfully bargain with us, so that we can reach a collective agreement, avoid any sort of work action.
From Terrace, I'm Damian Smith.
That wraps up this week's edition of Week in Review. Make sure to tune in on Monday for our newscast at 5, 6, and 11 o'clock here on CFTK-TV. Thank you very much for tuning in, and good night.